It is I, Alan Odinson, and this is the Barbarian Lounge podcast. I want to thank you guys and gals for joining me today. We got a pretty cool show lined up for you. I think you're going to enjoy it. I mulled over a lot of different topics for the show this week. I wanted to schedule some interviews, but a few of the people, it's weird. It's almost like it's cursed. A few of the people that I was wanting to get on, actually, they were either sick or they had prior engagements, and hey, that's the way it goes. But you know, I'm here, you're here, so we got a really cool topic. It's one I've been wanting to get to for a while, so I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. It really rings true to a lot of the things we're seeing in our modern societies today, probably things you're even seeing in your own community. So let's get a few things out of the way before we get started. The website is thebarbarianlounge.com. You can go there, check it out. I urge you, if you go there, to check out our donate button. There you'll find several options you can use to help support this show, such as the one-time PayPal donation there. That's an option you can use if you just want to, maybe leave a little tip or whatever in there. But I also urge you to check out our member site. That is our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/thebarbarianlounge. You can go there, donate a minimum of $1 per episode, and it will give you access to exclusive content only available to members of our Patreon. Now, basically what you're going to get is you're going to get our 4 regular shows. You'll get those early, but also you'll gain access to 4 exclusive shows only available to members. You'll never hear them anywhere else. I will never post them anywhere else. They will only be available to members, ever. We're also going to start adding some video content on there as well. Not really quite a regular thing, just kind of something I get on a whim. It's going to be more of an instructional based content, so stay tuned for that. That will be free for members. It will not cost them anything extra. So even though you are doing a per episode basis, so if you do say like $1 per episode, that'll come up to $8 a month to support the show. And any of the video content, you will not be charged for that if you are a member. So I urge you to do that. Help support the show. This show is constantly trying to grow, and we are constantly under attack. When I get through with all this stuff, before I kick the show off, I'll tell you of an interesting little tidbit that happened recently. So, also you can check out our host website, thebarbarianlounge.podbean.com. You can go there and subscribe. You can also check us out on iTunes as well as Stitcher. Barbarian Lounge is available there also. You can also check us out, UCY.TV, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Check us out. There's a live chat that goes on during the show where you can talk to other members, other people who listen to the Barbarian Lounge, and discuss the content there with them. Also urge you to check out our sponsors. Yes, our sponsors help keep this show going. Check out Odinson Archery, OdinsonArchery.com. Traditional bows made from non-traditional materials. Just recently, we debuted the 100-pound draw war bow, the war bow from Odinson Archery. That is a new item that is debuting. There's also going to be some other things debuting, as well as some exclusive items that will be debuted this year at Blade Show. So Alan Odinson will be at Blade Show. I'll be walking around with a lot of different stuff. So if you see me out there, I'm kind of hard to miss. So say hey, and hell, buy a bow. Also, Mitacon, MitaconUSA.com. You can go there and check them out. My boy Ben will hook you up with some Mitacon. Let me read this off here real quick. Mitacon, with a proper diet, supports the cell's fastest, most effective absorption of natural nutrients in each 250 milliliter bottle and sustains the body's mitochondria generation of usable energy, key to producing ATP, the energy-rich fuel the body needs to achieve peak athletic energy, strength, performance, endurance, and recovery. So yeah, check them out, MitaconUSA.com. I tell you, I've been sucking down the Mitacon lately, getting into this, back into this powerlifting mode, which I feel phenomenal doing now. I'm remembering why I liked it so much. It can be kind of tough on the body, and Mitacon, it's not some energy drink that I just huff down to get some pre-workout. It's something that helps me recover tremendously after a hard workout, and that is one of the biggest things that a lot of people fail at when it comes to working out, is actually good recovery, good rest and recovery. It's key. It's absolutely key. But, check them out, MitaconUSA.com. My boy Ben will hook you up. think I about got all the stuff out of the way. We got everything lined up. So let's jump into the show here. Let's jump into the show. Of course, I got my bottle here with me. So I got my glass, my big pirate mug full of my Mitacon to keep me flowing through this show. So today we're going to be talking about I think anyone who is anyone in the firearms industry, or even just the personal protection / defense mindset, if you want to call it that. Anyone who's in that area of study will know of this book that I'm getting ready to talk about. It's not a very long book. It's under 100 pages. I think it's 50-something pages. But it's a book entitled Principles of Personal Defense. It's written by the man himself, Mr. Jeff Cooper. He was one of the old school gun guys, man. He's I think Jeff Cooper, I could be messing this up. I'm thinking off the top of my head. Jeff Cooper was one of the original gun sight guys. And just phenomenal writings on, it's really just the eminent work on, the preeminent work on, personal defense and the use of force to protect yourself. And, he doesn't really pull any punches in this. And he makes it pretty well known that, this isn't about, I'm not asking you here to think about legal ramifications. I'm not asking you to think about anything in particular other than staying alive. And I think right now in today's society, with things happening left and right around us, all over the world, whether it's in our communities, in public settings where, shootings happening at the mall, just all kind of things, it's important for us to really understand these things that Cooper's talking about. Whether you're a guy that carries a gun, whether you're a guy that carries a knife, or a guy that's just planning to go fisticuffs with somebody, I wouldn't really recommend it. Either way, this will apply to you. Even really if you're that guy that's looking to just fucking get out of Dodge. These things may still apply for you somewhat. But it's definitely a book that I've wanted to talk about for a while. And, with some guests falling through on me, I thought this was a good time to hit it. So let's jump into it. The first part I'm going to talk about is basically it's going to start with a question. Are you willing to live, or do you want to die? Are you willing to live, or do you want to die? And I propose that question because that is at the end of the day, when I'm done talking about all this material, that is really what this all boils down to. At the end of the day, let me start off here with this. Especially in the world of martial arts in general, I see this a lot. We get into this whole idea about what is combat, what is fighting, how do we, what is the best fighting style? We hear that all the time, which that's such a loaded question, it's ridiculous. What's the best martial art? If you talk to a lot of people, they'll look at something like the UFC and they're like, that's the highest level of martial artist you can be. And it's like, well, that's the highest level of sport martial artist you can probably be. That's something you could certainly argue. But we have to understand, really looking at the root of martial arts in general. Martial arts is about the art of war, the art of fighting. The martial portion is actually the fighting and the war part of it. The art is being able to impose it on others without it being imposed on you. So if you get two guys that get in there and they just throw gloves on and they stand in the middle of the ring or whatever it may be and just start throwing hands till somebody drops, that's not really a martial artist. They've got the martial part down, but the art is not really there for the most part. So we also have to understand that the initial way that martial arts was designed was not based off some sort of competition thing where, I fight you, you fight me, we agree under these rules, and this happens, and, you tap me out, or, you win by points, or whatever it may be, and the fight's over with. The initial purpose of martial arts was about going home that night. That's it. That's all it's about. It's about living and dying. Am I going home tonight? Or I am going home tonight. How about that? A lot of times now in the martial arts world, we get in this whole thing like with the whole tapping out thing. You have to understand, like tapping out is basically almost like it's a signal of you would have lost that fight. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the fight is over with. Like, I'll give a prime example. I was doing some a fight, a cage fight, if you will. This was kind of back in the day. This was before it was technically even called MMA. It was just called like no holds barred. And I got my arm jacked up really bad, and it popped. Well, when it popped, it actually freaked the guy out that popped my arm. It freaked him out. It said pop, and he let go of the hold. Like, it freaked him out so much, he let go of the hold, and he jumps back and he goes, "Oh shit!" And I rolled up and got up. It's like, okay, let's go, right? And refs looking at me, and I'm like, I'm fine. And adrenaline's rushing. I didn't realize my arm was really jacked up, but I ended up TKOing the guy with my other arm. It was my left arm that was attacked, and I TKO'd him with my right. He was coming in for a double leg, and I managed to pop him with a right uppercut, kind of right uppercut / crossface, I guess you could say. I don't know if that was initially my intent, but he went down. It's kind of like if you ever see the old Dan Henderson versus Renzo Gracie from the Pride days. That's kind of what it was like. So, but the next day my arm was completely jacked up. But, the thing was just because you break an arm doesn't necessarily mean the fight's over. It just means, there's an arm broken in there. Okay? With chokes, it can be a different game because once you go to sleep, you don't really know what happens. But we have to understand that martial arts in general is about training yourself with the mentality. If you say you're training martial arts to learn how to defend yourself or learn to protect yourself on the streets, you have to understand the mentality changes completely as opposed to someone who's training for the cage or training for competition or anything like that. If you are training martial arts to protect yourself outside in the concrete jungle, if you will, your mentality is, I'm going home tonight. Plain and simple. You're not thinking about giving the guy a fair fight. You're not fighting under the 10-point must system. None of those things exist. Tap outs, what is that? A tap out is non-existent. If he's tapping out, I'm just going to assume he's reaching for a weapon, as far as I'm concerned. It's a different game when you're out in the street. When you choke a guy, you choke him till he goes to sleep. When you lock in an arm, you break it till you take it all the way. In catch wrestling, we always refer to that as a hook. If you're hooking it, there's no time to tap. There's a submission and there's a hook, and it's just a different mentality between the two. A submission hold means I'm waiting on a tap. So if I'm working a submission hold, means I'm training for a competition. If I'm working hooks, that means I'm locking it up and I'm practicing breaking. And yes, you can practice that actually with a live person and not fuck them up. That may be some of the instruction material I offer in the future for our member site. But you also have to understand, if you're taking the mentality of living and am I going to live or am I going to die, you also have to understand you can't really, at this moment, you're not really binding yourself by any sort of legal woes. At that moment, the only thing that matters is survival. That's it. The only thing that matters is survival. And a lot of times when people don't really think about the overall outcome of how this thing's going to play out, if they haven't thought about this beforehand, they start getting bound up with this whole idea of, oh man, I could lose everything. I've actually heard people say that they don't carry a gun because they have too much to lose. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, if I have to use that gun, man, there's going to be, I'm going to have all these legal problems and I may lose my house. I may lose this. And it's like, if you don't, and if you need to use it and you don't have it, guess what you're going to lose? Your fucking life, man. What is more valuable than that? Your house is more valuable than your life? But this is the mentality somebody has. But when you're in this mindset of, I'm going home tonight, those things don't really matter. It's all about survival at the end of the day. You find a lot of these people that, for lack of a better term, they become their assistant in their own murder. You see this with people. You see them try and rationalize why they don't need to fight, why they don't need to carry a gun, why they don't need to be trained, and they, in essence, are becoming the assistant to their own murder. It kind of goes back to the whole idea of no victims, only volunteers. And it's funny how that, if you talk about that to certain people, man, they get very upset about it. It doesn't really click with a lot of people, but if you talk to people who are those who have dealt with violence a lot, it makes perfect sense to them. I have a friend who's in law enforcement, and he said that most of the shooting victims that he sees, I didn't want to use the term victims, but he refers to them as bullet recipients. It doesn't have anything really to do with being victimized or anything like that. A lot of times they were just doing the wrong shit at the wrong time, and they were the receivers of bullets rather than a victim. But you also have to think about too, when it comes to, like, am I going to live? Am I going to die? It's kind of, I remember reading this in the book. I think I wrote it down here. Yeah, the quote that says that one who fights back retains a level of dignity and self-respect. And that's absolutely true. The guy that fights back, it's kind of like, you guys have heard me talk about living as a coward, right? When you have the ability to do something, but you choose not to. You choose to keep walking that day. You choose to run out the door rather than save lives. And hey, maybe that's for you. That's fine. If you're interested in living a cowardly existence, that's absolutely your call. Well, what if it's a fight I can't win? Well, you don't know that you can or cannot win the fight. And if you go into it already thinking that it's a situation you may not be able to win, my question to you is, why have you not trained better to be able to handle that situation? Because when you least expect it, my friend, that is when you get volunteered. That's when you get drafted to the fight. But a lot of people, man, it's they don't really have that whole. They don't understand their own psychological impact for standing down when the time comes for them to fight. And I'm telling you, I've even going through certain force-on-force classes that I've done, there's certain instances in there where I've seen guys come out. I had some myself when I didn't fight soon enough, and I've seen some where guys didn't fight at all. And in the scenario, it was somebody playing the role of a friend of theirs, and they did not fight back. They did not fight back. And even though it wasn't actually their friend, they would tell me afterwards that it was really kind of messing with their head, that I just let them die. I let them die. I didn't have the skills to perform medical. I didn't have the will to fight at the time. I run and hid so I didn't get shot. Those sorts of things. And everybody likes to macho up and say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. Anybody comes to me, I'm going to pull my gun out and I'm going to blast them." And that's all fun and dandy to say, but until you've actually pressure tested yourself, you're really just kind of working on a theory mindset there. But a lot of times also you have, even if you are willing to fight back, a lot of men who are willing to fight back, they're just not totally ready for the true human savagery that they're going to encounter. They're not prepared for that monster they're going to meet on the street. And this is where the whole training and mindset work comes into play. So that leads us to the idea of the bad guy. Let's think of the bad guy, right? The enemy. What is his kind of profile? What are you going to get from the bad guy? Well, the bad guy's looking for an easy target. He's looking for something that is going to be easily approachable. Someone who's got their guard down. He's going to be looking for a lack of alertness. I assure you of that. And that could be with your head down on your fucking phone. I urge you to keep your phone in your pocket. End all conversations before you leave a building when you're walking out to your vehicle. I can't tell you how many people I see doing that. Avoid walking with your head down. I see so many people doing that. They're not scanning the parking lots and whatnot. They're going to be looking for a physical weakness in you, or physical weakness in general. Let's be honest. A guy who's in shape, or who looks in shape, that looks like he can handle himself, is less likely to be accosted by a bad guy than, say, a guy who is 120 pounds with looks like Steve Urkel, right? They're going to look for you to be occupied, your hands to be occupied, meaning you're carrying a bunch of bags and shit. And that's something that, that can be an issue for us sometimes, but it's something we need to think about. Probably if you do find yourself in that situation, I would urge you to be extra vigilant. The criminal's also going to be, he's also going to be looking for a way to get close to you. Usually that is done by dialogue. A lot of times it's not just a pop up and go, ha, and they point a gun at you. That's not usually how it plays out. Usually there's a lot of dialogue that goes into the approach. It's, They work very similar to a salesman. They're trying to sell you on the fact that they are safe. The criminal, once you engage him, he's going to be desperate. He may be desperate when he shows up. Honestly, I don't have time to think about what his intentions and motives are. I'm going to assume right off the bat that he is violent, he's desperate, and he's also not a fucking idiot either. I'm going to assume right off the bat that he's smart. He's just as smart as I am. Hell, he may be even smarter. He may even be better prepared. Who knows? But never underestimate your enemy. Plain and simple. And a lot of people do that, man. I have harped on the people with the Antifa guys, which I was going to tell a story, so I'll throw that in here real quick. They think that they're just a bunch of idiots. You know, they're a bunch of weak idiots and everything. Never underestimate your enemy. If you think they're a monster and you show up to fight them and they end up being a mouse, that just means you were prepared for anything. But if you show up expecting a mouse and it's actually a monster, well, then there's a problem. Quick Antifa story here real quick. And I don't know if this is you call me a coincidence theorist if you want to here, but I'll just tell you some interesting things that happened. I got a random message from somebody that told me that they enjoyed my episode, one of my shows and everything like that, and they wanted to support the broadcast. And they're like, "Yeah, I'd love to support the broadcast and help sponsor the show. I need your address so I can send you a check." And I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, thanks for supporting the show and everything. Let me know what kind of sponsorship you would be interested in to start with, and tell me a little bit about yourself. And I'm not really accepting checks right now, so what we'll do is I'll give you some other options that will involve some online. I give them information about different methods they could use via online or supporting sponsors and whatnot." And they really wanted that address, you know. And I tried to open more dialogue with them, and I got no response. It was just complete radio silence. And then about a day or so later, guess what? Somebody tries to attack the website. That's so weird. Isn't that just an odd coincidence that right after someone was trying to get my address and I wouldn't give it to them, that they magically just started, that my website got attacked? You know, an attempted hack on the website. Isn't that something? Luckily, the protection that I've got on there, thanks to some of those of you who are supporting the show, actually managed to catch it before it happened. So, not today, Antifa. Not today. So let's get into a few things here with this with the book here. A few of the guidelines that Mr. Cooper talks about. And the first one is going to be one of the most important ones and the one that a lot of people mess up on. It is alertness. Alertness is very simply paying attention to your surroundings, not being in the old color code of condition white, where you're just walking around and you're worrying about what's going on, what's going to be on the game, and wonder what's for dinner tonight. No, you're walking around in about a state of yellow, where you're kind of paying attention to things. You're not primed and ready. A lot of people think in order to be alert that you have to be this paranoid freak, and that's not the case. Alertness a lot of times is really just paying attention to things that don't belong. And alertness, for a lot of people, alertness is something they just have. I've always been kind of an alert person, but at the same time, it's something that was always ingrained in me by my father. And it's also something that you can absolutely learn, and improve upon if need be. But one of the first things you got to do is start accepting that the environment that you live in is dangerous. That's the first step. Understand that where you live is a dangerous place. You may say, "Well, I live in the country." No. You're missing my point. It's a mindset movement to say where I live is a dangerous place. If you understand, it's like if I'm in the country, my guard is going to be a lot less down as opposed to if I'm in the fucking city. So it's because there's an expectation of violence in the city, but I always have an expectation of violence in the city. Now, obviously in the country, there are different types of animals to worry about in the country. But what I'm talking about is I've always got it in my head when I'm out in public, out in the city, that I'm always primed and ready. If you listen to the episode on the perpetual state of war that I talked about in the being ready for the fight, same thing. Your mind is in this whole mode where you're ready to fight. If the fight should show up today, you are ready for it, in whatever form it may come. You know, if it's 10 terrorists with AKs and body armor, or if it's some cracked out thug with a fucking pellet gun. Either way, you're ready for that fight. He describes as there are generally 2 rules to good alertness. And rule number 1 is to know what is behind you. And granted, that can be a difficult thing sometimes, right? No one is ever, I always hate it when people say that I'm always 100% alert. Nobody's ever always 100% alert. If you find me a guy that's 100% alert, and I guarantee you that at some point in a week's time, I can walk up behind him and tap him on the shoulder and he not know I'm there. Okay, you can't be 100% primed all the time. If a guy tells me, oh, I'm always 100% alert, it's like, so you're always alert when you're sleeping, you're always alert when you're on the shitter. I mean, you know, all these different things like that. And maybe some people more alert than others when they're on the shitter, but that's a different story. But, you know, that goes with just, you know, being out in public, quick checks around, you know, and a lot of times also a feeling you get. People have, whether you want to believe it or not, you've got that sense where, that sixth sense where you can feel when some shit's going to happen. I've heard fighter pilots talk about it. For people in the military that's just got a sense of it. Trying to think of his name, it's slipping my mind right now. Oh man, he wrote the Intuitive Warrior. Michael, oh man, it's killing me that I can't remember it. Cause he was a South Carolina boy. I used to talk to him a little bit. He was deep in PSYOC too. The Intuitive Warrior, he talks about when he was a SEAL, the same stuff happened with him, where he would just get like a feeling of bad things happening. But this also goes for, like firearms training. I was just talking, somebody showed me a video the other day of some guys doing some firearms training, and you see them shoot and the guys do the scan, right? The side to side scan. I cannot express to you enough the value of doing a 360 degree scan, knowing everything that's around you before you put that gun away. So, that's just a little side note there. Number 2, keep in mind to notice anything or anyone that is out of place. And this comes by getting a good feel of the location. Obviously, if it's someplace you've been before, it's easy to notice anomalies in there. If you've ever read the book Left of Bang, that is an excellent book talking about how you can develop this skill of really profiling your location. And you can pick these things out. I mean, I've been involved in some violent encounters, and you can feel them before they're going to happen, because before it's set off, those people already had my eye, because they were not doing the same thing that everyone else around there was doing. They're just things that did not make sense. You know, do cars come through here at this time of night? Do people walk around here at this time at night? Is this guy wearing something different than everybody else? Is he kind of scanning the room and looking kind of shady in the corner? Oh, that's me usually. But anyway, but you get what I'm saying. You're looking for the thing. You're looking for the thing that does not fit in. And that's one of the things that will absolutely help you. Because in all of these instances, if you ever watch these suicide bombers and stuff like that, keep an eye on them before they actually pull the plug, right? They don't fit in to the environment. They're usually not very good at blending in. They're not. Because people carry themselves differently when they're about to do some bad shit. But once you learn to get a feel of your location, you'll start to develop this ability to pick out things that don't make sense in it. Even if you're new going somewhere, if you go someplace, you can sit down for a little bit and kind of get a general idea of the mood of the room, and you can pick out those things that don't really add up. You can. When I used to work the security field, it was one of the things that I was always really good at. You know, I kind of feel something was getting ready to happen, and people would think, you know, I've got some kind of like, you know, clairvoyance or anything, but it's just, you know, I'm reading the room. This guy does not fit in here. What is he doing here? You know, is he doing weird shit with his hands? Are they moving around his waistline? Is he hanging around this area just a little too long? All these little things can help you start to really get a head start on the bad shit before it happens. And that's one of the things, you know, as the, which I'm going to talk about here in just a minute, but as the good guy, we're kind of affording the bad guy the first move, right? if you've got good alertness, too, and you've read the room, you're paying attention to things that are around you, you can start to get ahead of the game. So you're already starting to catch up. See, the bad guy is expecting to do some bad shit, and you're constantly playing the catch-up game. He knows what he's going to do. You don't have a clue. But if you start to pick up these little things along the way, you'll start to catch up with him. And before you know it, you're right behind him. And if you start adding these other things that we're going to talk about in here, you can start to pass him in some instances. But I hear a lot of people, when you start talking about alertness, a lot of people will say, I don't really want to live like that, man. Just completely paranoid all the time, watching your back and everything. And it's like, that's not the way it is. If that's the way it is, you're doing it wrong. Because you probably look like the guy that doesn't fit in, right? It doesn't have anything to do with being paranoid. It's just keeping an eye out for things around you. This especially becomes important if you're with your family. Because if you're a man, your primary goal is the protection of your family. You are your family's protective detail for the most part. So, it's not some horrible thing to be on a constant defensive mindset, I guess you can say. I hate using the word defensive. I must admit, but I get it in the term that it's used here. Defensive implies that you're not applying the violence first. So, alertness does help you catch up to them, though. The next one is decisiveness. Decisiveness, plain and simple, is when it's time to act, no hesitation. Zero hesitation. You've got to move. Now, granted, I completely 100% understand that is probably not how it's going to play out. Because there will be a moment where your brain goes, oh shit. And in that moment, things are happening. So you are going to have to play a game of catch up. However, once it's time to move, it's time to move. You don't need to be thinking about the law at that time. You don't need to be thinking about what's for dinner. You don't need to be thinking about how many rounds are in your gun. You don't need to be thinking about if your gun even works. You don't need to be thinking about, I may get tired. Any of those things like that. When it's time to fight, it's time to fight, and you need to make a decision. You need to have the decision. You need to already know exactly how you're going to react. Maybe it's not a situation where you need your gun, right? There's many situations you're going to run into where you don't even need for that gun to leave the holster. You don't even need to show it. It may just be somebody getting in your space and you have to move them. But when it's time to act, it's time to act. Plain and simple. And a lot of times, having a heads up on the laws and knowing your rights and your laws, your deadly force laws, your use of force laws, will help you get a head start on this as well, because you don't have to think about all the ramifications because you already know them. As I said, the bad guy is going to make the first move. That's usually his play. He has the advantage of already coming to the fight, knowing what he's going to do. Okay, your alertness will help you catch up to this, and the things you do will start to, can keep him back. While he's trying to use the dialogue, you can pattern interrupt him, which I've done that before. I have people come up to me. People think my wife always tells me, she's like, man, you just cut him off right away. And it's like, yeah, guy comes up, he's like, hey man, I got it. And I'm like, nope. And that's it right then. Nope. No, that's okay. I'm good. And you pattern interrupt them right in the middle, and you'll see them just stop because their plan is to come up and for you to pay them attention or say, hey, what's going on? And they just start with their story. If you destroy their story right off the bat, it just completely pattern interrupts them, and it confuses their whole spiel, I guess you can say. That whole first move is completely interrupted. And if they keep approaching after you've done that, well, then that lets you know that their intent is something more than asking for help. Okay? But the bad guy's going to make the first move. That means that you are going to be responsible for making an effective counterattack. Okay? Making that effective counterattack is going to be what you are going to, was going to be your response once he comes up. And it has to be a instantaneous counterattack. It doesn't need to be something that you need to play around with. But you need to have these things played out in your head already. If you are alert, you may have the time to actually switch the game a little bit where you're not having to make a counterattack, or you are the one that's actually attacking. Meaning if you're alert, you notice some things that don't quite fit in, right? Okay, well that guy's got I can see a print when he moves here. I can see a print of looks like a handgun in his waistline. And he comes up to you and he starts playing with his waistline. Well, hey, it may be time to act then, right? In whatever form that may be. It may be empty hand, it may be firearms, whatever it may be at that time. I'm of the mentality that if somebody walks into your reactionary gap, once they get in that range, you already know what's going to happen there. I don't even have to know if they're going for a gun. If they're in that reactionary gap, they're eating fists, elbows, headbutts, knees, whatever else they want. It's going to be a buffet of pain. So that's kind of my mentality with that. One of the ways that you can help start to develop this decisiveness is something that I've talked about several times on here, so I'm not going to talk about a whole hell of a lot, but is to basically kind of play an active shooter game in your head. When you're out and about, you need to run scenarios. Even if you're just sitting, hell, wherever you're sitting right now, run a scenario. Run a scenario of a random attack. And always don't have yourself on top of it, right? Like you're the guy that's automatically, well, as soon as they come in here, I'm going to quick draw and shoot them in the head, and that's it, No, put yourself at disadvantages sometimes, because you're putting yourself in a bad spot when that already gets your mind working for solutions to these bad spots you may run into. Such as, sometimes the fight starts off with you getting shot. I know a lot of people wants to think that bullets magically miss them and all these things like that, but sometimes a crazy motherfucker just walks up and shoots you. Okay? And that might be the first move of the fight. What are you going to do? Okay? Don't go, I'm going to die. If you already think that, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. Okay? None of the scenarios you run should end with you dying, okay? But play the scenarios out in your head. How would you handle it? Where's cover? See, a lot of people think when you talk about decisiveness that means getting your gun really quick and knowing it's time to do this. But a lot of times, it's one of the reasons I always kind of look kind of weird at people that focus so much on quick drawing their gun. The reality is when you hear gunfire, what are you going to do? You're probably going to lift your head and wonder where it comes from, or kind of duck your head and wonder where it comes from. And if you got any sense, you're going to seek cover as you're getting your gun out. So most scenarios aren't going to involve you getting your gun out and firing in 1 second. Okay. Now, granted, that's a cool skill to have and everything. But under stress, I would be very surprised to see you pull it off. So a lot of times, decisiveness is knowing what you would do. There's a lot of places I go, and when I run these scenarios in my head, it starts off with me getting low, finding cover, and getting to my handgun. Okay? If I'm like, okay, this guy starts shooting. Well, what's cover? What's concealment? Are there people in the way? Is this jackass right here going to run across my field of fire, or is he going to hit the ground and cower? I don't know. Maybe I run it both ways. But when you start playing these things out, it starts allowing you to understand exactly how you're going to play the game. Okay? You're role-playing this in your head. So this isn't something you have to think about in the future when the fight finally does come to you. And obviously another way is through force-on-force training. And a lot of people don't like to do force-on-force training because they don't like losing. If you've got any good force-on-force trainer, they are going to have you lose often. Because by doing so, you will learn. They'll break you down, they'll build you up. Okay? That's one of the reasons I cannot recommend enough the fight at Tactical Response. Is a class that will change your life. And James isn't paying me shit to say that. I'm telling you from experience and of the training I've done, there's nothing like it. And I urge everybody to take the class. There's a free advertisement for you, Tactical Response. But these things will help you. It'll give you kind of a Rolodex of scenarios. And trust me, it does. The next one is aggressiveness. And that's obviously once you're alert, once the time comes to fight, and you've made the decision to fight, well, you need to fight aggressive. You need to be like a rabid bear attacking, plain and simple. That first shot is probably going to be by the bad guy. Or at least it's going to be he's either going to land the first shot or he's going to attempt to land the first shot. you need to be returning that with overwhelming violence. They need to realize that once that happens, that they have made a grave error in believing that you were going to be a victim on that day. See, a lot of times victimhood is a choice. It is. That's why there are no victims, only volunteers. Exactly. That's exactly it. Because many people make the decision long before anything bad happens that they were going to be a victim. Whether they did not think about this, they didn't train, they weren't prepared for it. And it's like, it's not saying it's either bad or good that it happened to them. It's just the fact of the matter is, from a mindset standpoint, you volunteered for that, right? Why'd you walk down a dark alleyway? Well, there was no other way home. Well, I hate to tell you, maybe that's true, but you're volunteering to go down that dark alleyway. Nobody told you to go down there. Bad shit happens in dark alleyways. Stay out of there, right? You're in the bad part of town. Your car got broken into there. Well, you volunteered for that. You know it's a bad part of town. Why did you fucking park there? It's like, well, I had to get something. Well, you still volunteered for it. Okay? What steps did you take to make your car safe? That sort of thing. When you do respond, you have to let them know right off the bat that this is not going to be an easy fight. It's not going to be an easy fight. They need to understand that they have run into the wrong person on that day. Because you see, they're looking for the easy target. They're expecting you to be a victim. They're not expecting an aggressive response. They're not expecting an explosive counterattack. See, a lot of times aggression, if you fuck up doing if you're slow to make a decision, you weren't very alert, but you just respond with aggressiveness, sometimes that is enough. Just being aggressive is enough. There's a lot of fighters, professional fighters throughout history that really weren't technically sound, but they were just aggressive as hell. I think about guys like Vanderlei Silva. Vanderlei Silva was not the most technically proficient guy out there. I mean, he was punching from like he was pulling stuff out of his pockets. I mean, hands down, but he was just aggressive. He was super aggressive, just boom, 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 just rapid fire punches until somebody fell. And most of the time it was the other guy. And he'd get him on the ground, he'd just stomp him into oblivion, these sorts of things. And it's the same with like firearms. There have been many instances where guys have gotten jumped and they weren't aware. They were slow to react, but when they reacted, whoa, Nelly. I mean, they were just dumping rounds in that general direction. And I'm not saying dumping rounds is the obvious response you should go for, but sometimes an aggressive counterattack, that's what's got to be. If you've ever seen or done any sort of vehicle tactics, a lot of times what happens when the vehicle gets hit, you're coming out that vehicle like a fucking hurricane. Okay, and a lot of times you're assaulting towards that which is attacking you. You're returning with overwhelming firepower to let them realize, like, oh shit, this was the wrong vehicle to attack. You watch them. Watch some vehicle, vehicle tactics stuff. Whether it's executive protection or whatever. When the guns come out, like if you watch contractors and stuff train for like overseas, when that convoy gets stopped, guess what? Those doors open up and those fuckers come out and they are guns blazing, suppressive fire, boom, 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 and they are just responding with overwhelming firepower. And a lot of times that's enough. There are certain things you can do to help cultivate aggressiveness. Obviously, besides just the general fight training and whatnot, I would urge you to take a slightly different approach for your cultivation of aggressiveness. I would actually tell you to take a look at the world around you. Read the newspapers. If you still read a newspaper, read your local news. Watch local news. Look at the shit that's going on overseas. Look at the things that's going on in the world in general. Find horrible things to watch online. I know that sounds terrible, right? Actual real-life crimes. Crimes that were just absolutely ridiculous. Watch those things. Start to develop a sense of anger, a sense of resentment towards the animals that are willing to do this to other people. And this is kind of something I've been going through lately. I haven't said a whole hell of a lot about it on the show, but Just a little personal insight. My wife's brother recently was murdered by some MS-13 gangbanging pieces of shit. It was just a kind of a random thing too. There's some bad decisions made that put him in that position. But at the end of the day, it was just kind of like, we're going to kill you because. Things like that can help cultivate that resentment, that anger towards these people, because you see the pain that they cause. You see the loss in people's eyes. When a young person full of life has it taken away by some sorry piece of trash that is no good for nothing other than poisoning your community and killing other people, raining lead down on the cities around us, turning these places into the fucking cesspits that they came from. It doesn't take much when you start looking at that sort of thing to start really cultivating a resentment towards these animals. And they should be treated like that. They should be treated like rabid animals with a bullet through the dome, every last one of them. Because a lot of times, a lot of people look at anger, and I don't want you to be this crazy, shivering anger type thing. I want you to really take that anger and use it as a weapon. Have a controlled anger. And anger, because a lot of times, having this almost kind of like a quiet rage will enable you to overcome some of the natural fears that people can have. It can help you a lot of times. Obviously, you don't want to be out of control, which we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. But a controlled anger will help you overcome these things. So you have to understand, see, these pieces of trash, they have no right to prey on you. They have no right to prey on the little old lady down the street. They have no right to sell their poison in your community. Right now, there's a meth epidemic right now. I've got people, I saw local at the beach, they were saying, what are we going to do about this big meth outbreak that's going on? Do you have any suggestions? They were taking suggestions. And I'm like, yeah, find your fucking local meth dealer and put a bullet in his face. That's a good start, right? Right? I mean, let's be honest. What are you going to do? You going to put him in jail? Guess what? They're going to get out and they're going to start doing it again because that's all they know how to do. They're predators. And that's what they do. They prey on society. I'm starting to see local areas around me become completely infested with transplants from the northern cities that are getting pushed out of places like Chicago, all the way to the point where they're turning the local beach area into a new Chicago. We've had 6 shootings in 5 days. That's unheard of, and it's slowly climbing. Shootings, stabbings, heroin epidemics, people getting kidnapped, sold into slavery. Are we supposed to... Can you really say to yourself that these people do not deserve to be destroyed? That's how you develop aggressiveness. One of these pieces of trash, they want to put a gun in your face, and they want to tell you that today's your day to die. They don't have the right to do that. It's time we start taking those rights back from them. The next one is speed. Speed. Being able to do all these things, whether it be fighting, pulling a pistol, pulling a blade, whatever it may be, none of that matters if you're too slow to get it into action. There was always a saying with, I think it was a saying from Napoleon Bonaparte where he said that whether we lose the war or not, I will not lose a single minute, or I will not lose a single day. I think he said a single minute, or something like that. For us, in the situation we find ourselves in, it's more like I'm never going to allow myself to lose a single second, because seconds count. Being able to effectively get to your weapon, whatever it may be, whether it be your hands, whether it be an improvised weapon, whether it be a blade, whether it be a gun, having the ability to do that in a timely manner is very important. Now, I just said a minute ago, I'm not a big fan of this whole 1 second draw and things like that. We also have to understand that at the same time, pushing yourself to a 1 second draw is like, okay, I get it. 1 second draw and shoot. I get it. However unrealistic it is, it's not the end all to the fight, but being able to just get your hand to your weapon and get it out smoothly and efficiently is what I'm talking about. Speed. A lot of people just get so caught up in this ridiculously fast draw, and they don't really think about the idea of doing it under stress. If you can do it under stress, hey, hats off to you. Applaud you guys. But at the end of the day, being able to get to your weapon, getting it into the fight is the way we have to practice. I can't tell you how many people do not practice actually drawing their weapon, right? I see guys carrying pocket knives, and I'm like, how fast can you open that thing? And they're like, what? And you watch them pull it out, and it's just like the most ridiculously, cumbersome, slow draw they've ever done before. And I'm like, do you carry that for defense? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you need to start practicing, man. It's being able to smoothly and efficiently get your weapon into the fight is really what I'm talking about with speed. But that also translates into other things as well. If you're thinking about firearms, getting your firearm into the fight, don't think so much about just clearing the holster. Speed also, especially with firearms, is going to be sight acquisition. How fast can you get to your sights, right? We don't get to our sights. We just point in the general direction and shoot because, within 3 feet, you shouldn't need your sights. Okay. I get it. I get the whole thing like that. But, if you practice and train as you should, you can absolutely get to your sights and make good shots. Okay. Because just putting rounds on paper is not equivalent to good, effective, combative shooting and stopping a threat. Okay. You should always be working to get to your sights as quick as possible. Drawing it out, being able to hit the mark, draw up, sight acquisition, hit the mark fast. That's the way to go. That's a good way to practice. For you blade guys out there, you need to work on getting those blades into the fight. Can you draw it out? Do you carry it in a good spot where you can get to it? Same with guns. Do you carry it in a good spot you can get to it? All of you small the back carrying guys, you need to stop that shit right now. You need to put that gun in a position that you can get to it quickly and effectively. You people that carry guns in your pockets, you need to stop. Do not carry your primary gun in your pocket. Do not do it. That is the worst thing you can do. And I say this because I've seen people trying to get their pocket pistol out of their pocket under time. And it is a horrible, horrible thing. I'm surprised no one has shot themselves in the foot yet. You need to have your weapons in an available spot that you can get to them quickly and efficiently and get them into the fight. Our next one here is coolness. Coolness, which with firearms, it would kind of be precision. Keeping cool, I look at the whole idea of keeping cool is basically removing emotion from the equation. It's not good for people to fight emotionally. And I know I was talking about anger earlier. That's why I said controlled anger. Controlled anger, think of it as less barbarian and more serial killer, I guess you could say. I think I heard MC say that one time. But fighting emotionless is basically almost like you are there to do work. You're calm under pressure. You don't have the shakes. Or if you do have the shakes, you've trained enough to know how to compensate for those. But we do not want to fight emotionally, even if it's with your hands. Because a lot of times when you fight emotionally with your hands, you do stupid shit. Case in point, I run a class that I do for people sometimes called Berserker Training. And part of this Berserker training is basically I want them to go from 0 to aggressive instantaneously when I say fight. And the dummy that I have them hitting, it's not like a heavy bag or anything soft. It's actually kind of got a hard inside. So when you hit it in the head, it actually kind of feels like a skull. And I always tell the guys, I say, okay, now, when you hit this thing in the head, do not use a closed fist. Okay, gotcha. No closed fist. And sure enough, as soon as I get them ramped up and I unleash them, and I can tell by the way they're fighting if they're fighting emotionally or if they are fighting in a controlled manner. And those guys that react emotionally, the first thing they do is ball their fists up and start hammering this thing in the head. And it only takes about 2 rounds, and they can't even make a fist anymore. They can't hold anything, and I'm trying to hand them objects to hold, and they can't hold it. And I tell them, I say, okay, now you know why I say no closed fist. Think about it. Street altercation. If you use a closed fist and you punch somebody in the skull or the head or whatever, and you break your hand, what if the fight escalates and you need to get to a weapon? Well, now you can't operate that weapon because your hand's jacked up. Open hands. You can KO people with open hands. Let me tell you something. There's been many a man who has been knocked out via bitch slap. So, a lot of doormen use the bitch slap as a good primary weapon. You can put somebody down with that. So you want to be cool. You want to have a lack of emotion when you're training. I always try to do all my training very calmly. I don't typically like to use a lot of really hard music when I train. I actually tend to I like to do very violent things to very soft music. And that can be weird. I used to have students that would train to me and they're like, why are we listening to this soft, like spa music while we're training violently and smashing things with axes and everything? And I'm like, I don't want you to fight with the idea of needing aggressiveness in your fight. Your aggressiveness should organically appear. I don't want you to get riled up and get emotional, which that's what music tends to do for a lot of people. With firearms, the coolness with firearms, classic example, those guys that they react emotionally and they just dump the mag into the target or whatever it may be without thinking about it ahead of time. It's one of the reasons why when you take the fight, they never give you a full mag, because they have found that when you give a guy a full mag of sim rounds, the first shot that goes off, he is dumping the mag first chance he gets. He's going to dump it into him. Even if the person's down, he's going to dump it. If you have limited rounds, it makes them kind of conserve ammunition. And that becomes a big deal when you start talking about dumping the mag, because guess what? What's one of the firearm safety rules? Beware of your target and what is beyond it, right? When you start dumping the mag, I guarantee you're not going to get all those bullets into the target, right? So people getting this whole idea of spray. And I actually heard a guy the other day telling his girlfriend that all she had to do was aim towards the knees and pull the trigger. Just point and shoot. Aim towards the knees and pull the trigger, and that's enough. And I'm like, holy shit. That's how people get shot, right? The wrong people get shot. Also, bullets go through shit, right? If you're reacting emotionally, you're not thinking ahead of time, you're just thinking about shooting the bad guy. People forget that bullets go through shit, meaning you're not being aware of what is behind you. And yes, that can be done through training, working to move to a good position where if your bullet does go through the target, you are not hitting something else. Being able to calm yourself down to make a precision shot. People that get all riled up and get emotional and everything, you're typically not very good at precision shots.